Hey, hi. Waiting for two. I think he's facing some issue. Is it?
I'm not sure. He just wrote hi, but no message other than that.
Let's see if we can direct message him. You're texting him directly, or you want me to?
Do that, I think. You has his number?
No. On the chat itself, we can do a direct
Yeah.
message.
How are you doing?
Yes. I just pinged.
Okay. Everything okay?
I see you, but no. And for sessions. And click share automatically. He's able to see us, but he's not able to see any link. One second, I am leaving and join back.
Yeah. Hi, Toby.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, good, Toby. So I'm Shipra.
Yeah, hey, nice to see you. Give me one
Yeah.
sec. Let me just get situated here.
Okay.
Set myself to slideshow mode. But
Sure.
then I don't see you if I do slideshow mode, okay?
There's a third icon which you can see. The third icon with the TV screen like.
Yeah, give me
You can.
one sec. I'll figure it
Yeah.
out. See, everything works in test, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I should shift this screen to here and then it will work. Can others hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah,
But everybody can hear me or just you?
I think everybody can hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
We got a confirmation from the chat as well. Thanks, guys.
Okay, all right. One sec. Okay, so I'm here, share my screen, and I share this screen. Okay, and then I'll go to slideshow mode. Start from here. Slideshow. All right.
So as
Can you confirm that you're
Toby,
able to see my screen?
Yes. We are able.
Toby,
And it
Yes.
says prioritization conundrum?
Yep.
yes.
We are able to
Okay,
see.
awesome. All right.
To all the audience, you can just double click on the presentation to make it a full screen view. and you can see the presentation on a bigger screen. And you can type in your questions in the chat. We will take it towards the end of the session.
Yep.
All right, Shipra, I'm ready to go.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Toby. So
Yeah,
yep. All right. So a very warm welcome to all of you in the session, the prioritization conundrum and how to come out of it. So it's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker for tonight. Toby, an agile leader, is serving as an enterprise agile coach and transformation consultant. He's also an agile authorized trainer. So Toby, over to you for the session.
Thank you. All right, so we'll start with a quote from John Maida. I'm not going to read it, but I think the key thing that I have found is that it's important to prioritize what's on your schedule, and but also it's very important to schedule according to your priorities. And as John says, people who can focus, who can prioritize the right things, get the right things done. So this is very important for us, and I've seen so many people struggle with this, both in personal and professional circles, and that's why we are here to talk about it. So a little bit about myself. I've been in the corporate world, in IT for a long time, since 2005. And in my learning journey, learned a lot of things. But I've also found that across all these organizations I worked, people at all levels of hierarchy, a lot of them struggle with prioritization. And the fact of the matter is, there is so much to do, and there is not enough resources to do everything. So you have to make a choice, and sometimes those choices become extremely difficult for us. I think there's always urgent things to do, and there's always important things to do. And how does a person balance between the urgent and the important is really the core of prioritization. And as I saw all these organizations, all these leaders, all these people, struggling through that, I thought maybe this is a good topic for presentation. And fast forward to today, here we are to discuss prioritization. So warm welcome to all of you. Very good evening, and thanks so much for having me. Let's go ahead and dive into it. So what are we going to discuss today? So we'll talk a little bit about the what, the how, and the why, of prioritization. Talk about some relevant and prominent prioritization techniques that exist today. And really, they are tools that, as agilists or as leaders, we should have in our toolbox. We'll talk a little bit about the traps. These are all from my personal experience that I have seen, the traps that typically happen. And, based on all the experiences I've had and different tools that I've used, there are 5 that I find to be very effective. We're going to talk about it. And then we have an exciting project. It's called Project Mustang. I'm not going to give you any more information about that. It's going to be a fun project. So we'll move to that towards the end, and we'll have a quick debrief. Sounds good? All right, let's get into it. So what is prioritization? So I pulled this straight from the dictionary. Didn't use any of my own gray matter here. So it's really the deciding between the important or urgent things. And I hit on it a little earlier, but it's always that big challenge of so many important things to do, so many urgent things to do. What do we choose? So it really means first things first, as a simple, but it's not as simple, because how do you decide which is the first thing that you need to do first? And from a process perspective, really means that you're ranking the things in terms of urgency or importance. And the importance and urgency, again, is not the same. Like what was urgent yesterday may not be urgent today. What is important today may not be important tomorrow. During our work day, our work week, during our lives, these importance or urgencies keep changing, right? It's dynamic. And like as I said earlier, that's the crux of prioritization. How do you make that balance? How do you do the right things so that you get the right results? So what does that mean in software development, right? In Agile. I mean, this is an Agile conference, this is a Scrum conference. So I don't want to keep it too generic. So in our context, what does that mean? So let's say that you are in the business of developing remotes for TVs or audio or whatever it is. And as you can see, these examples, all of them have a myriad of buttons. So how do you as an organization, as a program, as a lead, decide which buttons to develop first? Do you wait till all the buttons are developed before you get feedback? Do you wait for everything to be fully tested, developed, integrated, and then release it to a smaller segment of the market? Or do you ask the question, hey, as a user, what are the buttons that they are going to use the most? What is of the highest priority for them? What is of the highest value for them? Which buttons can they not live without? And you develop those, and then you get feedback, and then you develop the others. I don't know about you, but for me, it's definitely the volume, the on off, and a couple of other basic ones are the only ones that I use. And I'm in the US, and if my wife and I are watching any Indian uh, shows or movie, and my kid comes in, or he's a teenager, he's not a kid, then he asks for subtitles because he cannot follow. So the subtitle becomes important then. So it's all context driven, but at a minimum, you just need a few to start with. So the entire process of prioritization in our world, in Agile, is really about your customer, your users. What is their needs? How do we achieve them in the shortest duration of time? Hope that makes sense. Hope that's a good example that you can take with you. So now let's talk about, what prioritization techniques do you use? There are so many out there, and not everybody is familiar with all of them. And as I said earlier, in my journey, I found it very difficult because there's so many challenges that happen, and you need to have the right tools to use at the right time. So let's dig into it. So this I have taken from a website called Folding Burritos, and I did not develop this chart. I mean, at least the picture. So there are 4 broad categories of prioritization techniques, and I've used quite a few of them. So just a simple way of looking at it is a quad chart. So there are some which are external and quantitative, by a feature, opportunity scoring, Kano model. These are some that you may have used. External and qualitative. So this obviously focused on quality. Moscow is very popular in the industry. Most people are familiar with that. Story mapping is very popular, especially in Scrum. You can definitely do a lot of story mapping. When it goes into scaling models, there is a lot of value stream mapping that happens as well. But at least at the Scrum level, story mapping is really effective. For those who are very visual, there is prune the product tree, which is kind of a fun exercise as well. And then there is speedboat. Now, internal and quantitative, these are more focused on numbers. And I'll just pick a few here. There is value versus cost, value versus risk, net present value. So these are some of the internal and numbers based. And then there is a qualitative. There is KJ, stacked ranking, and classification ranking. So these are qualitative. How do you look at, from an internal team's perspective, how do you look at prioritizing using quality as a measure. If anybody wants to take a screenshot of this, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, you could go to Folding Burritos and dig deeper into each of these topics if you wish to. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go deeper into each one of them. So now the question, and I think I've talked a little bit about it in the past, but why should we prioritize? Like, what is the use case for prioritizing? So here are a few that come up for me. I said there's competing priorities. There's not enough team members, not enough people, not enough skills, not enough people, period, right? And there's so many things to do. As agile teams, we are always trying to improve our efficiency. What does efficiency mean, really? It means that trying to get the most with the least amount of resources. And then there's a business pressure, right? Because we want to improve our return on investment. The client organization may be spending X amount of money on the project, and we want to be able to deliver incrementally, obviously, because we're agile, but we want to be delivering value continuously. How do you decide, which value to go for first? And then sustainable pace, right? We don't want to burn out our teams. We don't want to be working nights and weekends. And there are so many things to do. How do you choose which ones to do? Obviously, in Agile, the only thing which varies is scope. The number of people that you have in your teams, in your Scrum teams, is already set. It's already time boxed to whatever you're using, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever you're using. So the only thing that really changes is scope, and you have to prioritize scope, absolutely. Okay, move to the next. So what gets in the way? I mean, we definitely understand that it is very important. We know that high-performing teams make the right choices of doing the right things at the right time. We know that if we don't prioritize, we will not make progress. We will not be able to deliver value. But there are so many things that do get in the way. What are these? So I've put together some from my personal experience. You will not find them if you Google. These are just from my own personal experience, and some of them are funny, but they do have a lot of impact. So I'm going to hit a few of these. Hidden agendas. I mean, it's no secret that we work in organizations where there are silos, there are groups, there are teams, and all of them have their priorities. Now, agendas has a negative connotation to it, but each team has their own objectives. And understanding what their priorities are and making that collaborative discussions where it becomes a shared priority is important. And if you don't have that, you're not going to make progress, right? You won't be able, your priorities will not be the program's priorities. Egos it goes hand in hand with that. And so does politics, right? So all those three, hidden agendas, egos, and politics kind of go hand in hand. I've seen this happen so many times, is the loudest voice wins. Now, you could have come up with the best priorities for your team, but those may not get validated. Or even within your team, when you talk to your team members, sometimes the important may not get prioritized because the loudest voice wins. I've seen in client prioritization sessions, just to be politically right, they will invite so many people to the prioritization session that it becomes extremely difficult to get any priority. We get stuck. So you may have planned maybe one prioritization session and it ends up being so many. I think a lot of leaders have FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And some people, just because of pressure, they think that they need to invite everybody. So this is something we definitely want to avoid. There are so many human biases as well involved. Like a lot of people tend to have a central tendency. If you say, hey, can you score this between 1 to 5? You will see that they're scoring a lot of things as 3. On the other hand, there is an all high syndrome, right? You present options to the clients, and a lot of times they'll say, hey, which ones of these are priority for you? And you see after the end of the session, everything was high. If everything is high, which one takes priority? That becomes very difficult. So the point of this slide really is to be aware of these traps and knowing this upfront, that if you want things to be prioritized properly and for it to be valuable for the whole program, for your team, you should be aware of these things and find ways to use the right tool at the right time. With that, I'm going to skip to the next one, which is the top 5 prioritization techniques that work. So these are, in my opinion, the ones that really work, and I would like to share these with you. I'm unfortunately not able to see the screen or chat while I'm doing this. Let me take a quick look here, and then I'll jump back. Okay, 1 second here. Okay, all right. Just keeping a check. Host Shipra and Vijay, if there are any questions, I trust that you are going to bring them up, correct? Okay.
Yes, Toby, we will do that.
All right. So I don't have a view of that. I'm not keeping an eye on that.
No problem, we are.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Good teamwork. All right. So here are the 5 prioritizing techniques that work, in my opinion. And once you look at that folding burrito slide for yourself, take a look at that, and you might be able to come up with the ones that work for you best in your organization. But these are mine. These are Toby's top 5. We're going to go into priority matrix. We're going to go into Kano, Moscow, and stack ranking, and by a feature. So these 5 we're going to go over. We're going to take a little deep dive. We have about 40 minutes left. Okay. All right. So priority matrix, this is a very simple one, and this works for all level of people. This is not just for team members, not just for leads, not just for executives. This is a simple one that you can start using today. And you can start with as simple as, hey, I have 30 emails in my inbox. Which one should I read first? Which one should I respond first? So that's an example. Let's dig into it. So there are 4 quadrants here: urgent and important, urgent but not important, not urgent, not important, not urgent but important. So I'll let that sink in for a second. Think about the work that you do, and if you can picture yourself of all the things that you have in your backlog of things to do, if you could use a simple tool where you could break them down into 4 categories, even color coded, how wonderful would that be? So that you can focus on the urgent and important. Now, the trick here is that if you don't pay attention to the not urgent but important, guess where it'll end up, right? The position will shift. So this is a simple one. It's also called the Eisenhower matrix. And you could have a simple, on your whiteboard, you can have this, and you can start putting stickies on this. And like I said earlier, things change. It's dynamic. It could change by the hour, and you have control over that. as this can be a simple dashboard for you to decide what to work on. I've seen very effective people, they look at their calendar for the next day and decide where they should put their focus. You can't go to each and every meeting. You can decide what is urgent and important, what is urgent but not important, and so on. So again, I think this is very simple, so I'm not going to spend more time on this. The next is Kano model. So this is from the 1980s, but it's very effective, especially for people who are doing product-based decisions. Those of you who have a PMP, you might have come across this in PMP. As I said, this is from the 80s and it's been in use for a very long time. So let's look at this real quick, okay? So there are three classifications: basic features, performance features, excitement features. Now, basic features are expected. There is no, like, it's just like, for example, if we had to come up with the remote, let's stay with the remote control example. So if we had to come up with a new kind of remote control, obviously our users and the market will expect the basic buttons to be there, right? On, off, volume control, mute, go back to the previous, and some stuff. So you need those, right? That's MVP for you, probably. You absolutely need those. Without that, it won't even be called a remote. And then there could be some extra features that we want to add because we want a market share. So let's say if we come up with if an extra feature other than the basic. So for example, the performance feature for the remote control could be that it remembers all my favorite channels, for example, right? So that will definitely improve customer satisfaction. And then let's say we could have some excitement features where it could be voice control, or if the telephone rings, for example, I would love that. I don't have that in my remote. But when the telephone rings, the volume of TV automatically goes down, for example. Or if my wife is screaming at me, it automatically shuts off. That will be a really cool excitement feature. But anyway, so these are examples. So let's take another example real quick. I wish I could see everybody and I could see you people raising your hands, but if I had to take a poll of all of you who are attending and understand how many of you are using Gmail versus Yahoo versus other email formats, a vast majority of people use Gmail. Why? Because when Gmail first came out, it had so many excitement features in it that Yahoo at AOL.com and other ones didn't have that. And it has kept its market segment because it keeps adding more and more excitement features. So just keep that in mind when you're prioritizing. Yes, you should focus on basic features, but also make sure that you add a few performance features and excitement features if you can. All right, so with that, we'll move to Moscow. This is very, very, very popular. And I hope that most of you have used this. So for those of you who have not, I'm going to give a very quick. So Moscow, we're not talking about Russia's capital. We're talking about the must-haves, the should-haves, the could-haves, and the won't-haves. Some people call it would-have, which is kind of not decisive. The rest of them are decisive. So I go with won't-have, but if you want to use would-have, that's fine too. So really looking at all the features that you have in the backlog and basically saying, which one of these are must-haves that we can't live without? Like MVP is dependent on that. Should have, yeah, we'll do it if we have time. Or, this is important, but not as important. Doesn't have to be in this release or doesn't have to be in this sprint or whatever it is. Could have is like, nice to have. Yeah, it's okay, not a big deal. And won't have is like, okay, these add no value. We shouldn't have it. And hopefully, some people allow it to live in the backlog, but if it is there for a long time, they can be removed from the backlog if it just stays there and becomes stale over a period of time. So I like this for the simplicity of it, and it works a lot of times, helps to make decision. My only challenge is with this that a lot of times you'll end up with a lot of must-haves. So what do you do when you have a lot of must-haves? So I'm going to talk about that in the next one. So the next one is called stacked ranking. I like this a lot. This is my favorite. It is very simple. Basically, each item in your backlog that needs to be prioritized, you put a distinct number in that. You could start with whatever, like you could put all your stickies on a table or put it on a wall. Start with any one and start rearranging them in a stack. And then you basically compare. So let's say you picked a backlog item and you feel that it's high importance, high urgency, but really not that much. We could wait a little bit. Let's say you put it as number 3. Then you pick another one and say, okay, compared to number 3, where should this particular sticky be? And then you position it. And then you keep rearranging the position till you get consensus. If you're doing it alone, like if you're looking at your meetings the next day and you have 3 meetings which are happening at the same time, you have to decide between them. You say which one is important to you, you can decide. But if it's happening in a group setting, you do relative ordering. Now, this is very powerful, and because they're distinct numbers, you are actually making a decision. Now, the disadvantage of Moscow that I talked about was that a lot of them end up happening to become must-haves. So in this case, what you do is you do a Moscow first, and then you have a smaller subset of priorities or items, and then you can do a stack ranking. So you can mix and match these. Right? So this is stack ranking, and if you have not tried it, definitely try it. It's very simple. It does take a little bit of time if you're in a larger group, but it also forces conversation with your other stakeholders, where you're saying, hey, I feel this should be a number 2, and another person says, nah, no, it should be 4. And then you talk, saying, hey, why do you think it's a 2? Why do you think it's a 4? And then you decide. So this is very powerful. The next one is buy a feature. This typically works when you're doing high level, maybe epics features at that level. Again, this is also very conversational. You basically work with a group of stakeholders and understand, if you were a customer and you had X amount of money to spend, where would you put your money? So let's say you have 20 items in your backlog that you're trying to prioritize, and you have, let's say, 1 lakh rupees. What price would you pay for each of those items? And it becomes a good tool for conversation as well as negotiation, because you're talking to multiple people and you're putting a monetary value to that. And it actually shows from a user or a customer's perspective what is the value that is being put. So those are the 5 of my favorites. Hopefully, maybe a refresher for some of you for something that you've been using, and maybe a couple of new ones for you. With that, I'm going to move forward. Shipra, how are we doing with time?
We have another 13 minutes, so 10
That's
minutes if we
including
can
Q&A?
keep for questions.
Okay, all right. So let
3
me
minutes.
go through this a little faster, but it's going to be a fun one. All right, so I'm going to tell you my birthday story. So a couple of years ago, I turned 50. Yes, I'm old. And I slept the day before the birthday night. And when I woke up in the morning, on the kitchen table, there was this brand new cup. It says vintage 1967. And I knew it was a birthday gift, but I was kind of disappointed that it was, just a cup. But when I peeked inside the cup, there was a check or a IOU from my wife and kids that buy whatever you want. Here's our budget. And I'll talk more about the budget in the next slide, but it was a pretty big budget. And what got stuck in my mind is this number 1967, the year where I was born. And reminded me of a story or a book that I had read by Iacocca, where he had written about this amazing muscle car called the Mustang. And I thought to myself, what if I got myself a Mustang for this money that I'm getting? A 1967 Mustang. Exciting, huh? All right, jump straight ahead. The total budget that my family had given me was $20,000. I mean, it's a milestone birthday. And I started looking everywhere, and I finally found in the suburbs in like rural Virginia, one for sale for $5,000. And that's what it looked like on the right-hand side top. And the total budget that I had for restoration was $9,000. I have $3,000 reserved in case needed, and taxes and insurance $3,000. So this could become a wonderful car by fixing it up, but it's going to be rough. There's a lot of things that need to be done here. All right, so here's the backlog, right? The total number of things that I need to do to bring it to an amazing state is about $15,280. My budget is $9,000, and I have $3,000 set aside for taxes and other things. Per month, I can only use $3,000. And there is a slush fund involved of $3,000. If I don't use it, I could use it for other things. I don't have to use everything in the car. So this is a list of everything that we need to do. So take a quick look. You don't have to memorize anything. Now think about the 5 different prioritization techniques that I talked about. And if you could think in your mind, which technique would you want to use to prioritize this backlog so that Toby can have his dream car in the budget that he has and in the time frame that is available. Sorry to make you work, but I think this will help you to remember the techniques. Okay, now real quick, if you can go on your laptops or your phone and go to mentimeter.com and type in the code 3111327. And whatever of those 5 techniques that came to your mind, if you could type that in or select that and submit. We have about 5 minutes for this. And your time starts now. So some of you are putting it in the chat window. Oh, the code is not working? Did you put 3115? All right, so it worked in test. Sorry about that. That's okay. If you guys can just put it in the chat window, that's fine. We improvise. So of the 5 techniques, use one, right? Tushar, you've put 2. Okay, I see what you did. Okay, awesome. Yeah, if you guys can just put in the chat window. Sorry that the Mentimeter didn't work. I had tried it before. I see stacked, Moscow, stacked. Okay, nice, nice. Yeah, so make sure you try something that you haven't tried before, so that you can learn something new. All right, so going back to the slide. All right, guys, hopefully that was a good exercise for you. And so here's how I prioritize my backlog. And I came up with a budget of $8,905. So I came under budget. And these are the ones in the red that I decided not to do. And I went with the ones that you see on top. I kind of put them in priority order based on the things that I absolutely must have. And I would love to get new Mustang emblems, but I could do that later. I just changed the bulb instead of changing the whole headlight. Changing the bulb was, where is it? It was much cheaper. Here, it was only $75 compared to $250, but I'm getting almost the same kind of result. I would love to get a nice new stereo system. I could live without it for now. But anyway, long story short, this is what I came up with. And hopefully you guys, got to understand, what techniques to use when. And so this is the picture of my Mustang car on the right-hand side. I love the car. And I was able to do that because I could prioritize based on what is needed. When I had done this was in October, my birthday, and it took a good amount of time to get it done. And I knew that I wouldn't need like a glass dark tint till summer. So I deprioritized it. Afterwards, when I had some of the extra money, I actually got it tinted afterwards. So as I said, your priority changes with time. So what did we learn? We talked about why to prioritize, what is prioritization, what gets in the way, what are the typical traps. We talked about 5 different techniques that are Toby's favorites that you could use. And then we did a quick exercise. We'll open it up for questions, but also if you could, how was your session experience? You could put 1 or 2 words in the session chat. And I believe there is also a poll where you could rate the session. And I think I'm stealing thunder of the organizers, so I'll keep quiet after this. So Shipra and Vijay, if you want to come up with questions, that'll be awesome. And
yes.
And this is my contact information if you want to get in touch with me afterwards. And let's jump to questions.
Okay. Thank you, Toby. We have a couple of questions to start with.
Okay.
I'll take up the first one. What if the product owner is not able to prioritize in the right manner and is creating a confusion and delays in the sprint delivery?
So
what is it that you?
Okay, great question. So the product owner is there to serve the team, and many of these decisions are team decisions as well. So if you, and I don't know the person who is asking this question. So if this person who's asking the question, let's say, is a Scrum Master, then you would focus on building that relationship with the product owner and really making a partnership and ensuring that they are giving inputs to the product owner. So a lot of times, a product owner is a kind of very precarious position the product owners typically are, because they are the conduit between business and development. And a lot of times, there's a lot of pressure from both sides, and sometimes it's difficult to do those things. And I think now that you have learned these techniques, my hope and desire and recommendation is that you share these techniques with your product owner, and hopefully you can have a dialogue and help them move in the right direction. But yes, it happens, but it's as a collaborative team, you should swarm to move that to the next level. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Toby. Next question. Where do you think does the biggest gap in prioritization happens?
So I'm going to give you a standard consultant answer, which is depends. I think in my experience, the biggest problem that happens is because people don't understand the impact of the prioritization. A lot of times, either adequate information doesn't exist, or the people are too siloed in their desires, and they're thinking way too much in the tactical level, and there is not enough alignment or depth of information. So as Agilists, if we are able to present as much information as possible, so that people are able to make those decisions in light of facts, that would help.
Okay. In the interest of time, we'll take one more question. Can you please suggest one book that can help Scrum Master in educating product owner who is unorganized on various methods of prioritization product backlog?
So I'm going to think about the answer. And given that product owners are busy folks, they may not have time to read through a whole book. I would share my slide deck with them, and we're going to share it so you can use my slide deck, and maybe you can present my slide deck to them and have a dialogue and really make it a productive session where you take into consideration, hey, in our organization, here are the typical challenges we have. Do they align to these ones that Toby has put in, or are they different? And then kind of think from that perspective, and then look at the techniques that are given here and see what techniques work best for you. Because asking your product owner to read a book may not be a solution. And again, I don't know what is the role of the person who's asking the question. Obviously, you're not a product owner, so you're either a Scrum Master or a team member, because there are only 3 roles there. Either if you're a team member or a Scrum Master, if you can partner with them and come up with an approach that works best for you, that would be my recommendation. I would not ask them to read a book. It doesn't work. Because it's very theoretical, right? Textbooks don't work. I mean, they work, but not in this context. You have to be pragmatic.
True. And same is the case with the Scrum Master as well, right? Reading books may not help trying to approach it more practically, and building that trust and partnership with the product owner is where it helps them to yield results.
Absolutely. And Vijaya, one of the things that I have found in so many organizations is that product owner is a missing role a lot of times. You don't have a product owner. Somebody else plays that role of a product owner. And sometimes it is very challenging because the person could be playing another role and product owner, and you shouldn't do that. I mean, product owner is a very important role. And unfortunately, in a lot of organizations, they don't give enough importance to that role. So we should support that person in doing that role well. And especially if you have a product owner proxy who doesn't have the same power as the product owner, you really should be supporting them in becoming successful.
True. With that, Toby, I would really want to thank you for such a good session. We learned quite a few prioritization techniques as well. I'm sure the audience also loved your session. Team, we have the polls open. Please feel free to rate the session, how you liked it. And as Toby requested, you want to add some pointers in the chat, you are free to do so as well.
Yeah, maybe one or two words where, what you took away, or, how your experience was. Awesome. Thank you so much, Vijay and Shipra, for being co-hosts and co-facilitators of this. And thank you, everybody, for taking time to come see me. Please do connect with
Thank
me
you,
on LinkedIn.
Toby's LinkedIn ID is there on the screen on his contact details. You can pick it up from there and connect with him. Yeah. Thanks, Toby. Thanks
Thank you.
for your time. Signing off, guys.